Hi, this is Paul. I want to take a little time today to discuss safe medication administration. And as some of you might know, I'm an instructor at Nursing Training Center and was a medication aide for 2 years and have been an LPN about 3 years, and spend a lot of time, especially recently, passing medications in long-term care and heavy med passes, okay, which most long-term care medication passes these days are really heavy, all right? So here's some of the problems that we run into. Let me start out with the fact that when you're unfamiliar with residents, that's a safety issue. But also, once you get to know the residents, being too familiar can also be a safety issue. And let me tell you why. Because we're creatures of habit. And when we're really familiar with the med pass and the residents, things become more automatic. So, for instance, initially in our lives, we may have to learn to get dressed and think about what we're doing. But as we do it through life and being creatures of habit, we get dressed without even thinking about it, right? We don't stop now and say to ourselves, now, which leg am I going to put in my pants first? How am I going to put on my shirt? Even driving can tend to be automatic and like a second nature to us, so we probably don't focus as much as we should. And I see this all the time in long-term care with other nurses and we're going to talk about this as far as signing off meds and so on and so forth. They know the med pass so well, they really kind of do it without thinking. They're like on automatic pilot, and, they know the med pass so well, they'll just get in the drawer and pass it and then sign everything off later, narcotics in particular. Okay, we're going to talk about why that's a bad idea. So what I want to emphasize here is once you get really super familiar with residents and the med pass itself, that can cause errors because it leads to an unfocus, and you're an autopilot, so to speak, passing the meds. And so we're going to talk about a phenomenon that I've mentioned before and want to reiterate, and that is called the doorway effect. So have you ever been in a room and gone to another room and forgot why you went into that room? So I'm going to read a little bit here. I did a little bit of research on it, commonly called the doorway effect, where you forget what you went into another room for because crossing a doorway acts as a mental boundary, causing your brain to switch contexts and essentially refresh the memory, making information from the previous room less accessible in the new one. Essentially, your brain updates its focus to the new environment, okay, causing you to forget the reason you entered the room. So key points about the doorway effect. Context change. Moving through a doorway signifies a change in environment, prompting your brain to shift focus to the new context, potentially forgetting the previous intention, and for our purposes, replacing it with other information. Memory segmentation. Our brains naturally compartmentalize experiences based on boundaries, like doorways, which can lead to forgetting details from the previous space, or for purposes of what we want to talk about, replacing what you forgot with the new context with other information. Research support. Studies have shown that people tend to have poor memory recall when crossing a doorway compared to staying within the same room. So the danger we get into when we're really super familiar with a med pass and the residents, and the danger happens when you change context and then your med pass is interrupted with other information, whether you're on your way to a room and a aide calls your attention to another resident that may need help, or a discussion about other residents, so on and so forth. So, in the heavy med passes I've been doing lately, I think a lot about the school and about the clinicals and what I learned through more and more experience. And as medication aides, we're never going to stop learning. As long as I've been passing medications to the extent that I have, I'm even right now doing my own in-depth further study, continuing education on insulin. All right, and was very surprised at what I didn't know about insulin and how that can add to resident safety, having that additional knowledge. So, as a medication aide, you're never going to want to stop learning, and the more knowledgeable you are, resident safety in passing medications is going to be implemented. And as a nurse that thinks about these things, and is also an instructor at the school, the light bulbs start to come on as to why the Ohio Board of Nursing and the National Board of Nursing has these 6 rights or principles of medication administration. All right, we're going to talk about some of those today. And here is the key point to what I'm sharing here. We want to make the 6 rights of medication administration automatic or habitual and not anything else. Okay? We want to have the 6 rights of medication administration habituated in our mind, so that's automatic. All right? And then that's going to present the other problems that come along with other things in our med pass being automatic. Okay? And so I'm going to share the procedure that I do that follows the 6 rights of administration that I do no matter how much pressure I'm under or the situation that I'm in passing medications. Okay? So the doorway effect is huge. This is a phenomenon that takes place in our mind. It's how our mind works. And our mind thinks and operates contextually or in context. Our, our mind has a tendency to compartmentalize, right? And so when we're in auto mode, that could become a problem because, particularly when we're interrupted, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're replacing what we were focused on with other information, okay? And if it's after the fact, we can automatically function according to the new information rather than what we were focused on. Keep that in mind. That's pretty much the whole point of the procedure that I'm sharing. All right. So when I'm passing meds, what do I do first? Well, I go to the EMR, or in some cases, I guess facilities still use the manual books, right? And we're gonna talk about how we apply the same principles, whether it's point-click care or using a manual book. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do, we'll start with an EMR. We're going to bring the EMR up, and we're going to go to a resident, and we got the resident on the screen, right? All right. So I'm particularly thinking about a situation that we had in clinicals where a staff nurse, we were in the middle of pulling meds to take to a resident. And in my situation where I'm working now, one of the jobs I had, a lot of times it's going to be a hospice nurse coming up wanting to discuss one of my residents, right? In this particular case, the same thing happened to us in clinicals where a staff nurse that was on that hall and we were passing meds for came up while we were passing medications or pulling the medications for another resident and started discussing this other resident. I'm going to tell you what I do, okay? I immediately stop pulling medications for that resident, okay? I take the EMR back to the dashboard, okay, homepage, whatever we want to call it. Because what I'm going to do, I've been interrupted while I'm passing for that resident, and I'm just going to cancel that altogether and start completely over. Now, what you can do, and it's your choice, I don't choose to do this, but if you want to do this, it's okay. Excuse me, not now. I'm passing meds. I'll get with you as soon as I can, but no. Okay? And then stay focused on what you're doing. You can do that. That's what I was used to as an STNA in several facilities. Back in the day, nurses were adamant to not be interrupted while they were passing meds. I mean, it was the fastest way in the world to get a syringe in your neck. Just kidding. But you just didn't do it. The nurses were just not nice about it and just told you point blank, no, do not approach this cart while I'm passing meds. So what I did, I kept the little spiral notebooks, that you flip over. I kept one in my pocket, and I would write down my communication with that nurse, ring 220, complaining of pain, whatever. I would rip it up, and I would just walk by and put it on her med cart and keep going. Okay? And that worked out really well. When the nurse would like glance at the note and then just keep on passing meds. Okay? So again, I don't multitask while I'm passing meds. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a med cup and I'm going to write the resident's full name, okay, and the room number. All right, always, okay, and like if it's point-click care, okay, there's a little yes or no on each med, and as I'm pulling the med, I'm going to click on yes, and it'll highlight the box, and that's also good on point-click care, which is mostly what people use, because if you click yes on something you pulled and there's parameters, that'll pop up, and it's like, oh, okay. So you got to unclick the yes and just, know that you already pulled that. And then that tells you that it has parameters. And that's great because on EMARS, a lot of times the print's real small and there's a lot going on the screen and you can kind of miss it. Usually in manual books, the nurses or the administrators will like highlight it in yellow if there's parameters, and you can add, underline it with a red pen, and that's pretty good. But it's important to prep, because if you're pulling all your meds and you do get interrupted or distracted, or the list, whether it's on the electronic MAR or the book, not in order. So you're going, okay, I'm pulling this med, and then I'm going back up here and finding this med, and they're not in order. Something's out of order. So this happened in clinicals, some of the students, they put that little dot in the book, okay, in the square, okay, some don't, but there was one particular case where the girl had a whole cup of pills and kind of got lost as to what she had pulled and not pulled, and there was no way of knowing. Rather than to be able to go through and say there's a dot there, you pulled, that's in the cup, that's in the cup, that's in the cup, that's in the cup. Same way with point-click care, PCC, if I'm saying that right. So, a lot of times you'll walk past a med cart and the nurse is sitting there poking around in all the meds, looking at the MAR, looking at, let me see, that one's in there, that one's in there. Then I've also seen nurses saying, actually count the pills and then count how many that they're supposed to pull. Not really a great idea, by the way. Okay? So prep, On point click care, whatever the software is, click yes. Now on Eldermark, all right, if I forget, there was a way to prep. You would like, the whole strip would light up if you click on it, and nothing's going to be down as administered until you click on save, right? All right, so that's good for right now. Let's talk about NARCs, okay? See how I have this book, okay? I turn the book this way so that when I open it, the landscape pages are right there, and there's the NARCs, okay? So I'm not like, let me see. Is it okay. No, I go ahead and position the book, okay? So that when I need NARCs, and your NARC box is right here, right? I'm like, I just flip that straight down, and the NARCs are right there, and I find my page. Then I open up the NARC box, okay? And I'm going to find the card. I'm going to pull it up. My page is right there. I'm going to compare it. I'm going to pop it in the cup, and then guess what? I'm going to sign it out and then check, double check my end count. All right? It doesn't take that much longer at all. It doesn't take any longer at all, really. And then guess what? At the end of your med pass, you know the NARC book is right. You know it's right. Okay? I do that religiously, and everything I'm showing you is habit. Okay? This part's automatic. This is the part that you want to do without thinking. Okay? Not everything else, especially things you're too familiar with. So I double check my count. It's right. And one thing you'll notice about manual books that aren't electronic, there will be numbers on the side. So basically, when you sign off that med, okay, when you sign off that med, the next number on the left should be what's left. The manual NARC book is designed that way. So what I'm telling you to do is really just old school nursing. Okay? You double count. You make sure your MAR is correct, okay, or your NARC count is right before you close the book. And then what I do is just close it like that. Next time I open it, boink, okay. And then the NARC box is right here. I double check my count, and I close, okay. Now, if you want to, because with point click care, when you go to actually pass the meds, you're going to click hide, and it's, your screen's going to be, blank to hide what's there until you come back and click on, medication information is hidden. You're going to click on hidden, and it'll come back up. On a manual MAR, you can throw your marker there so you know where to come back, or what some nurses will do, they'll flag the page like this, okay? They'll flag the page like that, okay? It's not particularly hidden when you do that, but it's most of the page is hidden. So, personally, I just take my marker and throw it in there so that when I come back, I can find it quickly, okay? So that's that. Then before I go on to finish up, I'm going to show you a little trick, okay? when you go to count with a nurse and she gives you the keys, all right, you want to be proactive, and you want to kind of kindly and professionally what would call preemptive? Would that be the word preempt whatever she's going to do, if that's the right word? And here's what you want to do. You want to take the keys from her, or even prior to that, and here's what you want to do. The box is here. You want to take that NARC book, and you want to open it up right in front of you. Okay, like this. And then you're going to say, okay, let's count. Okay? That's telling her in a very nice professional way that you want to see the book while you're counting. All right? Does that make sense? So while you're counting the cards, now, for her, the other nurse, I say her because most nurses are female, so she's standing here, right? I know I'm sitting, but she's standing. So when she turns the page, you're standing here in front of the NARC box, she's standing here. She can see the book, you can see the book, and she's just turning the pages like this, with her right hand telling you what the count is, and you can look right up and concur with what she's saying, all right? Now, in 99 percent of the cases, the nurse is going to follow right along and walk up and say, oh, okay. But you're just going to grab that book, go ahead and open it to the NARC pages and put it right in front of you. Okay, now, if she actually takes the book and comes over to the right side of the top side of the cart and starts calling out the numbers, it's decision time, isn't it? Okay. You can say, can you put that back over here where I can see it? Okay. But yeah, that's if she actually takes the book and takes it down here and starts calling off numbers, in the vast majority of cases, that's not going to happen. If it does, you're just going to need to say, hey, can you put that back over here where I had it? Okay? That's pretty low key. It's not rude. It's very reasonable. But by going ahead and opening that book up right in front of you before the nurse even picks up the book, like I said, 99% of the cases, they're just going to go along and go ahead and turn the pages. And by the way, that's when I turn the keys over to another nurse, that's what I do. I open up the book right where it is and turn those pages, and I call out the numbers, but she's standing right there and can look down and see it. That's what I always do. Okay? So 50% of the time, if not 80% of the time, if you don't go ahead and take control of that book and open it up in front of you and then unlock the box, 50 to 75% of the time, 80% of the time, most nurses are gonna go ahead. If you just take the keys from her and open up the box and look through the cards, like I said, 50 to 80% of the time, she's going to go ahead and take that book and read it off from the other end of the card. Okay? All right. So, enough on that. Okay? Now, the last principles here. Okay? Look, always put the resident's full name, room number. Always. Okay? Because when I walk away from the EMAR or the book, okay, I'm going to look at that cup that put that resident's name in my mind one more time. When I go to the room, I'm going to look at the room and the room number. And then guess what? When I go into the room to give the meds, I'm going to look at that resident and look at my cup a third time, okay, before I give those meds. Because as medication aides and nurses and long-term care and these heavy med passes, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of distractions, and a lot going on, okay? And there's a lot of compartmentation, I guess the word is. You're walking away from the med cart down the hallway, okay? People are approaching you, talking about other residents. And when you're compartmentalizing like that, the way the mind works, is wired to work, again, the danger is that you'll replace the information that you were working with other information, okay? So, full name, room number, okay. So, I got in a hurry, okay? And I'm like, on one med pass. And I was in a unit that I wasn't familiar with the residents. So I'm like, I'll tell you that the guy, we'll use the name Bob, okay? Bob. So, yeah, Bob. Room 134. Yeah, that's all I need. I'm in a hurry. Bob. Room 134. Okay. It wasn't Bob. It was actually a more, not as common as a name. I'll use Bob. All right. Now, there was another Bob in that unit. All right. There was another Bob in that unit, and his room number was 143, I think. Oh, hold on. 143341. Okay. It was backwards. All right. So, it was like, I forget what exactly the numbers were, but they were exactly backwards. Okay. So, one Bob's room number was 143, and I think the other Bob's room number was 341. Okay. So, I'm on the way to this guy's room. I got approached by a hospice nurse about some other resident. And there was a lot going on. Okay. Another resident was complaining of a headache. Wanted PRN meds. The aide told me about that. Something was going on with the third resident. So I start walking off to this room. Bob, 143. Bob, 143. Bob, 143. I come up to the room and Bob, 431. Walked right in. All right? So, at least I stuck by one principle. I'll say the resident's name, and then I'll say what I got for him. Okay? You may not always do that. I don't always do that. I do most of the time. So I went in there and, hey, Bob, I got your Tylenol. Tylenol? I don't take Tylenol. Okay? Now, here's another principle that I live by. Okay? Full stop. I know at times it's hard, you're under the gun, but always live by this principle. Okay? I always listen to the resident. Okay? A lot of times, particularly in memory care, what are you talking about? I don't take that stuff. Get that stuff out of here. Okay? Even if I'm positive that everything's right according to the 6 rights of administration, I'll go back and check tomorrow. Okay, I'll go double check. I'll stop everything and I'll double check. Okay, so I go in there and the guy's like, I don't take Tylenol. What are you talking about? And I'm like, Bob, 341. Oh, what was that room number? So I go back out and look at the room number. And I'm like, oh, there's another Bob in this unit? And so, point made here. Get your procedure and stick by the procedure. Don't take shortcuts. Okay? So, always listen. Another principle here. Always listen to the resident. Always listen to the resident. I was a med tech at a particular facility. Got called in to bail out a nurse that was, a lot of stuff went down. She was doing the whole facility by herself, and I was called in to bail her out. So she knew I was on her way, stopped passing on this one hall, started on the next hall because she was way behind. So I showed up at the facility, clocked in, and took up her med pass on the other hall. Going down the hall, pulled lots of bottles in that particular facility, pulled all her meds, and people, it was like a whole cup of meds. It was like 15 meds, at least. Okay, just a whole cup of meds. Okay. And so I went down to this lady, and she had a diagnosis of dementia. Okay, no doubt about it. And so I walked into the room, and she said, I already took those. You already brought those to me. And you know how people with dementia have time distortions. Something that happened, 5 hours ago, they could very well and often do think it happened 5 minutes ago. But sticking by my principles, I always listen to the resident, no matter what. So I went back to the cart, double-checked everything, and these evening meds were not signed off. So I went and found the other nurse in the other unit, and of course she was under a lot of pressure, and when I questioned her about it, she wasn't kind. Her response pretty much was, yeah, I gave her evening meds. Why don't you look at the MAR? Okay, and it's like, well, actually I did look at the MAR, and these are not signed off. Okay? All right? So, point made. Okay? Hopefully. full name, room number, always listen to the resident. Lastly, only have the person that you are passing meds to on that MAR. Okay? Because when I get done passing to that resident, that's the same resident that's on that MAR when I get back. One of my hardcore principles is nothing is on that screen but the person I'm passing to when I pull the meds and when I come back. Okay? Habituate yourselves to the principles of the 6 rights of communication. Okay? And there's a lot more that I could talk about. I just more or less talked about the order and some procedural things in regard to that. There's a lot more that we could talk about, but for today, I just wanted to cover this. Thanks for your time, and see you soon.